And welcome back. My name is Joe, and you're listening to Abandoned Planet. Abandoned Planet is where I invite you to also abandon your planet, those thoughts and old beliefs, the old patterns or ideas that are constructed, so that way you can see life in a different view, a different angle, a different perspective, a way of life that maybe you haven't experienced or seen before. So welcome back to we're on the fourth episode now. Yay! Wait, I got a button for that. Yeah, we're back. Welcome back to the fourth episode. This is where I discuss the fourth episode stuff. That's what I really wanted to start off with discussing the creative flow because quite often I am one of those individuals. Maybe this is someone like yourself who is constantly thinking about what is my life purpose? What am I doing today? I don't have a routine. My routine is very ADHD. I have ADHD. That's my routine. What am I doing today? What am I doing here? And we'll get into more of my experience with this, but I'm always wondering what's next or what I should do next. What am I supposed to be doing? I'm getting a lot better at it. But the creative flow, I always try not to plan any sort of thing when it comes to these podcasts. As you watch the video or you listen, I don't have really anything written down at all. There's a notebook here, but I don't have anything written down for this podcast. But what I mean by that is I have ideas sometimes, but I'm reminded to talk about this because I think we're always trying to have some sort of security in knowing like what we're doing, right? A lot of us need to have these things at certain times. Like I need to know, or you need to know what you're going to be executing or doing in a certain manner. But I'm someone who also struggles with this, that I feel like I need to know before I do anything. And there's things that we need to know things before we do them for sure. But when we're talking about this creative flow, though, it can be a struggle because for me, I have this passion of talking or sharing with you or individuals about my life and bring something across, but sometimes we're really not meant to know what that really is going to be until we're in the moment. It kind of reminds me of dating or our daily life struggles. We always kind of want that security and know where we're going with things or where things are going. We want to make sure we see excuse me, certain signs that we're like, oh, this is definitely it, And a lot of us might struggle with that knowing of how do you know that this is the answer for you? And the whole point about this conversation is going with the flow. Going with the flow is very different angles. There's just allowing life to happen, but stepping into that direction, just trying to see what happens. I'm not gonna lie. I started this video and like every other, this audio for podcast world too, but this recording, I typically am used to already. Every time I start a new episode, I like start an intro and delete like three of them. And after like the third one, I'm in. And I just keep rolling with it. I don't know how to explain it to you. This is what happens. I'll be like, hey, I'm like, no, delete. And then I'll be like, all right, do it again. Hey, welcome back. So this is like the third or fourth intro, but I'm used to it. I get the nervousness out of the way, I guess, or if you want to look deeper into the rabbit hole of the Tesla 369 method, I don't know. But my point about everything is I think for myself, and I speak maybe for you as well, I struggle sometimes with knowing if that's the good direction for me or if this is the answer. Being intuitive or spiritual, there's blessings behind it, but I think when it comes to our own life, how do I feel about this? We can get in our own way, and I'm someone who sometimes gets in my own way because of emotions. But I'm getting a lot better at it, and I'll share a little bit more about how this works for me. But the more we get out of things emotionally and start to look at things at a better angle, it can really help us. We're unplugging in a different viewpoint or detachment to see things at a different perspective in a good way. But what I want to remind you in this conversation right now that we're having, you don't know that we're having, but we're having together, is that let it flow, let it unfold on its own. I'm not saying don't do nothing, but sometimes we're afraid of taking that step. We're afraid to step into it. And I'm someone who's very passionate about what I talk about or what I want to share. And sometimes I literally have no idea. And Spirit kind of reminded me earlier um, to talk about this honestly. And I just jump in and I start talking about certain topics that have either been on my mind, but I don't have a control over it in the sense of like how I want it to be. I just let it be, let it do it. I know I need to do it. I want to do it. Um, and I get into it. And it's one of those weird and interesting feelings because there'll be times where I know I need to do it, or because I do these weekly now. Um, but then there's this worry about the feeling and the flow and what is the message and what do I really want to talk about and so what do you think? It's overthinking. So if you're someone who overthinks, I like to talk about this too. It reminds me of like kind of holding something in your hands and just going back and forth. There's like a loop. Nothing really happens until you take an action about it, till you speak about it, till you make a decision. Um, but I've always been like searching for this like happiness, and we'll get into more of this. I don't know if maybe you are someone who's constantly looking for happiness, but we'll speak more about this in a moment. But besides that, I want to go backwards a little bit. I think I talked about last episode speaking my truth to people. It was either the second or the third. Speaking my truth to people, it's still kind of going on. I'm not gonna lie, bit me in the butt a little bit recently with this retrograde. In a good way. I mean, like I'm not really upset with myself or holding myself back about it, but a part of me was starting to get really frustrated. Like I had this anger coming up with this whole retrograde, just before it, and I was like, you know what? Some my intuition's right about it, but you know, I still also called myself out in a way. I put it on Facebook and I was like, you know what? Some of you, you're gonna have a hard time this retrograde, and you know what? I don't give a shit, and I really don't, honestly. Like everyone, I do and I don't. Everyone's gonna have their moments, and I also had my moments, so it kind of like came back around. But I was frustrated with people. It really, I want to bring you to this clarity I had about things though, but I was really frustrated. And quite honestly, I would see people posting, and I was really triggered for some reason around quote unquote fake people. What do I mean by fake people? Um, I think fake is a really heavy word. I've been using it and I really don't mean to. I'm kind of just starting to realize more that some people just aren't aware about their lack of authenticity. What is it like to not be authentic? It's kind of like just kind of being this version of yourself that you want to people please, and you're not really addressing what you really need to be addressing, and you're just posting to post and um, not being yourself. You know, when someone's really authentic, you feel that. You feel it. When someone's not being real, you also feel that too. It's like, what's your deal? But I was really getting annoyed, and I don't know if this is because I can say that I'm grateful that I was, because it really brought a lot of awareness to myself. Um, but yeah, just I wound up deleting a lot of people on social media, and I also kept speaking more of my truth. But what it really did bring me to, which is really a blessing, is I started to realize how much time I really have been spending focused on social media, or quote, I guess my success on social media or business on social media, all of it. And if I'm going to be honest with you, as always, I've spent a lot of time trying or doing, I don't want to say trying, well, doing both social media stuff. And I'm not just like saying, I mean, it's included, but on my phone, constantly looking at stuff. But then I started to get annoyed. I was like, why am I like, why do I care about what other people are doing anyway? There was some lady that posted something and it was like, oh, oof, the retrograde. Everyone remember you have a decision to make. And I was like, shut up. Someone, I also deleted them too. It's just like people, I could feel the fakeness. It's really it's just annoying. I want to promote what I promote, what I want to encourage people to do is really speak your truth. Be free to be who you are. And I think there's a version of that. I think there's like a sugarcoating of people, and some people think that they are being who they are. Maybe they are the best they could be, but there's this point where you really like being your authentic self is really like it involves complaining. It's being true to how you really feel. It's you're not like trying to be someone. And what I mean by this person also let me give you like this demographic here. The person that I'm depicting who was like, ooh, be careful out there. They're like older. They're the type of individual who enjoys like group conversations, but they don't do anything about anything. They just enjoy the intention from talking about spiritual stuff and galactic, but they're not doing anything. They're supportive of certain things, but they're just people who enjoy talking about stuff and they do nothing about it. And I just get annoyed with people who want to be leaders, but they're not really leading. Meanwhile, they're trying to sell like essential oils or something, you know? Because everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be appreciated for what they're doing. They want to enjoy their passions. There's certain things we all search for, but for the talking purpose right now of what I'm discussing is I'm encouraging, and I always encourage you to speak your truth. Look, we're not all supposed to be happy all the time. And a part of your shifting or evolution involves you being discomforted, angry. It's about releasing things that you've been holding on to. And I think the hard part for me was I was in that in between for a while of like, do I say what I really want to say? And how is that going to be received? And I stopped caring in a good way. I just stopped caring. And what I'm really glad, and I wanted to bring this back around for this episode to bring you up to speed on what I'm kind of experiencing is I spent just too much time, I think, trying to get people's approval, trying to be seen. This is, over time of my awareness recently of not being my authentic self. Because quite honestly, a couple episodes ago is when I discussed like when I started to really like do something. And you know what's interesting, right? When you finally have enough of something, like you're over it, you're done. You make a solid choice, right? That solid choice is that decision that's almost pretty much 100% in alignment with you. You're like, no, I'm done with this. I'm over it. So you make another decision that's pretty much the same, 100% in alignment with you. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. It leads you more into yourself. So the more I step into my alignment, I started to realize, I was like, why am I spending so much time on social media? And I have this kind of feeling ride over me. And that feeling was, I'm ready to live again. And it's a beautiful feeling and thought. I'm ready to live again. I'm kind of a little bit teary-eyed talking about it. I'm ready to live again because, oh man, I think it's been a year. It's been a year where I would, either go to work and come home and I would be depressed, honestly. I was trying to find this happiness that I wasn't in alignment. I wasn't happy. I was doing things to do them. I needed progress. And when I went to California, I took a trip to California around end of April into May. And I didn't realize it till I went on this trip, but I was lacking a lot of self-worth. I was dealing with self-worth issues. And what that feeling is like when you're around people, but your inner being is like, nah, I don't want to do this. And it's a form of depression in a way, but it's like I wanted to be free to be myself, but I was insecure and I wanted to be comfortable. And that's where I'm at now is being comfortable to really be myself again without not depending on who's around me. Always, this is who I am. Not being worried about what anyone thinks about me. I'm not trying to mold that or wear a mask anymore. And the more I'm realizing this now with the whole decisions of stepping into my truth and authenticity, um, and having this realization that I'm ready to live again. That ready to live again is this thought and feeling where I'm aware that I've spent so much time, I want to say, trying to do all this stuff on social media because I was trying to like listen. One day I'll share this episode where I bring you back to like painting this picture for me of why I refer back to it a lot. And it was really just, I want to say just, it was a big time for me. It was a good time for me. But what I'm starting to remember in reference to my past of this good time is it was just an alignment. The alignment of my true self was free to be me. And also this realization of really loving myself. And I thought about that today. But to live again is to live in this real world. We live in this world, and I'm not trying to like make you feel bad. But you're listening to this on social media somewhere, right? On a podcast or whatever. So don't just like detox yet. I'm just kidding. But listen, we're in an era where a lot of us are on our phone. It just is what it is. And I've been aware, and I think we all are, that when you are on your phone or doing other things, sometimes you're avoiding yourself. And when you honestly start to become with yourself, you're like, "Oh, I'm alone. I'm lonely." I know you just get uncomfortable. You don't want to be with yourself, and we start to look for other things to do. And sometimes it's necessary to be with you. But I've just been trying for a long time to find this answer to my fulfillment with social media. And the more I became aware of detachment, right? You're detaching from people, you're detaching from things, energies. When you start saying no to something or you remove something from your life, it's a form of detachment. We really need to all be detached from everything in a way, in a healthy way. You're not supposed to attach, you're supposed to just flow. But I started to detach myself and I really started speaking my truth, and I'm glad I did. And it brought me to this peace. Like I'm ready to live again. And when I'm saying this, it's to make progress in the real world. I was spending a lot of time trying to make progress in the social media world. And right now it's very flooded and overwhelmed with other spiritualists and people who is real and who's not. I don't care to know, but it's just like it's not even fun anymore. um but that's why I was kind of glad I still enjoy and love doing this podcast, because it's not just one thing, it's a mixture of different things. It's my art, in a way, it's my life, sharing different metaphysical viewpoints. It's just where I put my stuff. And um thank you for all you who are listening and enjoy it. So I appreciate you. It's when you create something, right? It's just the passion of it. It's not in hopes that you like it, right? I really do like, I hope you do enjoy it, but I'm not making it with the intention or hopes that you and someone loves it. I'm making it because I love it. And that's really what the whole passion of what you do and why it flourishes, because you're doing it because you love to do it. And I think that sometimes when we going back to where I started with the podcast with creativity, sometimes we don't do something because we're attaching it to like, why would I do it though? What's the point? And that's really I hope that this hits or helps someone. Maybe not hits in a bad way, but I hope this helps you. This is a great message because you love doing it. It's almost like saying like, why, I like making art, but who's gonna buy it? And I think it's a common thing where artist, musician, chef, podcaster, whoever you are, it's making something, and, and you think, who's gonna like me? And it's this idea like, why me? Like, why would it be me? Like, because we all idolize or have our favorites. Maybe not idolize, but we have our favorite music and artists and people. So my thoughts for you are, why not you? And whatever you're doing, even if you're not trying to be something, just I'm not saying like if you're not trying to be this big artist or big, just do something because you love doing it. If you love baking, you want to try some new baking recipes, go for it. If you love podcasting, I think, I mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. Even for myself with this podcast, I've done one before. And this is very true, actually, reflecting back on this is the 4th episode now. The first episode was the hardest. I didn't know how I wanted this to start. I didn't know how I wanted it to begin. I didn't, the first, it's like the first, it's got to be something good. And one of my favorite people I really enjoy listening to is Rick Rubin. And he talks about the creative flow. And he has a great book too, by the way. And it's really like just the first one's always going to be like that way. Just step into it. So if you're someone who is really excited to do something, or maybe something tickles you in a way, you're like, ooh, I really, maybe not like go rob a bank, but try it out. But going back to what I was saying earlier, and then, by the way, I do have ADHD. I have ADD, but they want to combine it for some reason. It's similar but different polarities. But so I bounce around. So if you can follow me, you might have ADHD. No, maybe you don't. It's okay. You're okay. But living in the real world, doing real world things. Do I do stuff? Yeah, but for a long time, it's embarrassing, but I was kind of like in a funk for a while. It's kind of like, what am I doing? What do I want to do? It's very frustrating, having this ADHD thing. I don't have children. I don't have like big adult responsibilities yet. I love to have that one day. But when I do have free time, it's like I'll wake up and kind of like already start off asking like, what do I want to do? Like, I don't know. And it reminds me of being a kid. When I was a kid, I have a younger brother, but when I was growing up, I was solo. So for most of my time, I remember being kind of young, and my mom would be like, all right, let's do this. Like she would give me stuff to do. And I think it comes from that as well. It reminds me of like, what's next? What's next? And I was like looking forward to what's next, and kind of drives me nuts sometimes because like, all right, did that. What's next? But we'll talk more about this in a minute. I think it will help other people. But for a long time, honestly, like I got annoyed a lot of the times because I would wake up in the morning and I remember it bothered me at one point. It sounds silly, but I wouldn't know what I wanted to do first and what I wanted to do at all. And I kind of we enjoy routines, but we don't. It's weird. I enjoy the freedom, but I also enjoy like the routine or regimen, but I don't. So I kind of felt lost for a while. I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. Don't get me wrong, there was a lot of self-worth issues, so I didn't feel worthy of things because I was upset about the past or how things had fallen apart with the past or what had happened with the past. It's always in the past. But right now I'm at this place where I'm starting to really love myself more than I have in the past year. It's been steps and steps and steps, but not caring what anyone thinks and speaking my truth was big. Removing myself from people was big. But also, these decisions were uncomfortable. We have to make uncomfortable choices sometimes. It's very interesting. I started my spiritual awakening off with certain things that I remember. It wasn't comfortable, but I remember getting to a point later on where I knew what I needed to do, but I was afraid of like the outcome and just the unknown. And it's really, we know what we need to do. We just need to do it. And sometimes we could be attached to things. And I think I was definitely attached to like the past and how good it was. And I wanted to do it again. And I definitely over time, I haven't really talked about it yet, but I have a addictive personality where I'm getting a lot better over time since I've been aware of it. But if I really have loved something, I overdo it. So if it could be a drink, it could be a food, and I think it's part of the ADHD thing. And anything that really feels good, it's a dopamine hit. Dope. I mean, hit. Yeah. So when it came to my past with the whole alignment and spirituality, and I felt like I had this purpose and felt good about life, and I wanted that again. I want to get back to that. It's very an addictive feeling to be in that higher vibration, but you have to let go eventually. Um, it's talked about in different places, letting go of the past, letting go of that version of yourself, because there's more to life. There's other parts of different things to evolve into and to live in the present moment. And I think I was trying for a long time to get back to that. It was the first time I really felt my life had this purpose and placement, but life will teach us more. And that was the big message I really started to come back to with this whole kind of creative flow. While you're stepping forward into things, it really doesn't make sense sometimes, but then you look back and your story does make a lot of sense as to why that happened and why it brought you here, and you're glad that that happened. You wouldn't know this version of me if I didn't go through what I went through. And that's why I'm kind of grateful of that. Even the hard times or the bad times, they're not really bad. Heartbreaks, they made me who I am today. We have to kind of hurt and expand emotionally. Um, but speaking my truth has been great in many different ways. The other way was also, you start to really say what it really is. You're not trying to go around it. This is how I feel. This is what it is. And I got tired of watching other people not do it, but that really embraced me to do it more. Hey, let me do this for you. um, no, but you got to do it for yourself and not be someone else. We're trying to people please, but to live in this, ready to live again. And it really made me emotional and happy in a way. It's like, you know what? I'm ready to move on. There was things that really held me up in the past that I wasn't proud of. I wasn't really happy of the version that I was. I can't blame people. There were certain things that, definitely brought it out. People that brought it out, situations that brought it out, but in a good way, you get to see yourself in ways that you need to let go, and it really triggers. It's very triggering. It's uncomfortable. That's why I say, like, people go through relationships and people and friends. Yeah, things happen, but sometimes you got to reflect on, like, all right, what do I need to learn about this? And I lacked boundaries. I lacked confidence. It was very interesting. The more I look back, I was very confident in one way, but I was very insecure in other ways. And it was flip side of things. But I'm learning to let that go and live life again. And living life again, what does that really mean? It's like, for me, I realized, like, I don't want to keep doing this pattern that's not working for me anymore. It's like, why not, kind of, when you have acknowledged in a healthy and a really good way that no, you're okay. You're at peace with letting a part of you go, or a habit of you go. Moving on. And to be honest with you, a part of that also played out with, I mentioned in the last episode of going to a friend's party. I was very talkative and meeting new people, and I enjoyed the conversation. It was more in the present moment and getting out there and having a social life. And I don't feel like I've had that for quite some time. I have friends that I hang out with, but it's always kind of like I'm in my room, I'm on social media, I'm not doing other things. And I kind of like was so attached to this that I wouldn't allow myself to do anything else. I wouldn't allow myself to appreciate what I was doing outside, doing other things. It was very like negative about stuff too. I didn't want to do things. I think we all at times get negative about the work. The work is work. Don't get me wrong, I don't always want to do things, but I'm starting to realize, like, The work is necessary. If you want to really achieve anything, you have to do the work. And this is really a good path to go in. Do things, accomplish them, enjoy them. I think we're waiting for, well, we wait for something to happen, or we will look for something else to make clarity of it, whatever that might be in the confusion of life. But going back to what I was saying before about being your authentic self, start making decisions. Start being really honest with yourself emotionally, mentally. Start really saying how you really feel, whether that's healthy with yourself or, to a friend or a therapist or someone. But when you start really getting frustrated, I think it's a good thing, because you can really go, you know what? The frustration kind of brings in the truth. This is it. This is how I feel. This is what it is. You could be like myself, where you start speaking your truth, but there's a healing process in that. And later, after you have vented or spoken your truth, you learn more about something later on. And I think we're afraid to learn something because it could be embarrassing, where you're like, oh, this is how I feel. And then you go, oh, I was just hungry. But sometimes it's necessary to say how you feel. Love is unconditional. It's not always going to be sweet and cute. People give and show love very differently. Do I agree with all of it? No. But people will make you something. Maybe it's a dish, or culinary dish. That's a way of love. Maybe it's a poem. Maybe it's a song. Maybe it's a phone call. I think we're all expecting it to be a certain way. It's not always gonna be like, hey, I love you. Some people have autism and they don't know how to express that, But that's what I'm trying to say is, don't just try to look for specific signs or clues, especially when it's to loving yourself. And that's been my journey, is loving myself. As I said earlier, with loving myself in the past, I'm starting to remember some things as I kind of come back to this alignment. It's really loving myself and giving myself the full permission to be silly, to be fun, to be all of me, and not change that around anyone. Depending on the situation, sometimes you got to be like, it's a setting. But sometimes, in order to really know who you are, you have to be true to yourself. And through that expressive area, you're learning to become aware of who you really are. How do you let that side of you out? If you want to be funny or silly, I think we're afraid to be judged. We're afraid to be unloved or disliked. And a part of me let go of, who cares what anyone thinks? I know I'm awesome. And I am. I know I'm awesome. But for you, the listener, you're more than just a listener, okay? But for you, whoever's listening to this and you're watching, you have to kind of go through the motions. You are the greatest experiment you will ever have or experiment with. So when you're experimenting with yourself, learn to challenge yourself. Be brave. Realize that you're uncomfortable about speaking up about something, and speak up about it. You're afraid to say how you really feel. Sometimes it's, you don't know how to do something, and so it makes you nervous. Like, just confront those things and overcome them. But loving yourself is going to be the biggest thing you can ever do. And I'm learning more to live my life for me is really the big message here. I'm living my life for me, but I'm also sharing it with you. I think we all want to have a witness to our life, or someone that cares, or to have an expressive outlet. And this is my expressive outlet. The more I've realized that if it's difficult to talk about, I need to talk about it. So it helps me, but it also helps you. For a long time, and I'm not saying I fully know what I'm doing, but I really didn't know what to do. I knew I wanted to be happy. I knew I wanted to feel good about my life. I knew I wasn't there yet. And I kind of felt really lonely, not gonna lie. And that's why I think there was the frustration with people. I didn't need to hold on to people anymore that not that they weren't doing anything good for me, it was just more or less like they weren't really supportive or helpful or the friends I really needed to be there. We all need to let go of things and we need to move on. And that's a really big impact on our journey because we need to evolve and we need to change in order to become the newer version of ourselves. Um, what else do I really want to talk about in this episode? We'll see what's next, man. This is a great conversation, though. Well, it's really with just me, but I'm glad you're listening. I think about this sometimes. Do I want a really healthy, loving, romantic, or just a really good relationship? Yeah, but I know that I need to have that with me first. I need to have that love for myself first. I already knew. I knew that I can't expect anyone to fill a void because if we do that, it's temporary and it's not going to be enough and it doesn't bring happiness because you're hoping that something fixes something. And I was talking about this not too long ago and I was mentioning how sometimes we think progress is a good thing and it's not always a good thing. If you're with someone or you're doing, you're with a job or all these things, if there's certain things that aren't bringing positivity and they're lacking growth and they're lacking change and you introduce progress in the wrong way, it's another void filler. It's like, oh yeah, we accomplished this, but it's just putting another layer over something that's really not at the core good. Um, it's a lack of proper validation, or validation's not bad. Wanting it in the wrong ways is bad. Receiving it in the wrong ways. There's polarities to everything. So sometimes we have to really face it and go, this is not good. And we fear sometimes how to move forward. I think moving forward in general for many people can be a struggle. But day by day, making choices that are going to be helpful to you. They could be small, they could be big. They could be, routines of listening to meditations, doing things that will help give you love and a new routine or pattern changes the pattern. Little things are significant. So I remember doing Kundalini yoga, which is like, breathing. It's deep breathing. And that was really beneficial. That changed a lot of things. It brings in new patterns. Things that you do change your patterns. If you have a pattern that's not working, you introduce new things that are going to be beneficial for you. And maybe that's not part of your routine. It's a little struggle to put it in. You start doing it. It changes things. So things are significant. And making tough choices. But I was talking about relationships and love and all that, but I knew that I needed to first love myself. And I do know that I like to play with the perception of life, right? The law of attraction. And there's no coincidence to anything. There's always something happening in the moment for a reason, sometimes beyond our wildest knowings. But there's no coincidence to meeting people. The moment crossing paths with someone, the person at the door at the gas station, seeing someone you knew years ago enter your life. All these things, there's so many factors. There's no coincidence. And sometimes I like to look at the energy or the curiosity of it, putting my ego and judgment or overthinking aside. I like to look at it with the reflection of myself. Everything's a reflection of us. So I like to play with the curiosity of, I wonder why this person's in my life, or I wonder why that symbol showed up, or I wonder why. And we know that if everything happens for a reason, and the law of attraction's at play, we connect with people, podcasts, we connect with energies. And I don't like to always have the answer sometimes. I like to play with the curiosity of, I wonder. But sometimes there is an answer, but we don't have all of the answers. Do I need an answer for everything? No. But I like to play with that, wonder why this happened, the event or conversation. Sometimes it's so much fun because you were talking about it before and all of a sudden you meet a stranger who's also talking about it. And all of a sudden you're listening to Joe on Abandoned Planet. And he's also talking about it. What are the coincidences? There's no coincidence. The law of attraction and energy works that way. The more you think about something, the more you talk about it, the more you have this playful energy with it. It creates this magnet or magnitude or magnetism that will bring you more of it. And there's a certain feeling about it. It's this, for me, it's like this excitement and focus on a topic. And I don't know, it's a mixture of different energies for me. And you're just in it. And all of a sudden, someone else is there talking about it, or you find the law of attraction. I mean, I love doing this thing too where, oh man, this freaked me out once. I don't remember why I was so focused on this. I think I was being guided to, but I was really at one point focused on New Earth. Don't get me wrong. Spiritual awakening, New Earth, that was like level 1. Later on, I was heavily guided into New Earth in a different way. And I wasn't talking about it. I was on the phone with someone at the time. And I was standing in front of the bookshelf here at the house. And I was just on the phone talking. I was like, I'm standing in front of this bookshelf. I'm just going to grab a book and open it. And I grabbed this book and I opened it. And I think my mother had bought it. It starts talking about New Earth and like the natives talking about New Earth and the afterlife too. That was a big thing for me too at the time. The afterlife, eternal heaven on earth. It was like the eternal living. You never die. And the book, I open it up and it starts talking about that. And I was like, what? And I read it out loud and I was like, no way. And I think I had just mentioned it before on the phone too. Yeah, actually I did. I remember that. I was on the phone and I was like talking about it. I was like, what do you think about that? That was weird. So there's no coincidence to anything. We're always in the law of attraction. We're always, when we're seeking some sort of clarity. I remember I can talk about this now, I think. Well, I've talked about it before. I was at the airport with my I was at the airport. Well, scratch it. I was at the airport, okay? And there was a bookshelf. And it had like, I don't know, God's Divine Timing Messages book. So I grabbed it and I opened it to a random page, right? And the book, the page said, God says you're in a toxic relationship and you need to leave now. And I went, oh, you know how true that was? I was like, oh my God. That's the stuff I love. I found myself, talking about the whole shift in detachment and living again, as within, so without. What's happening in this physical world is also happening in some way of your internal world. So your room's a reflection of you, your energy. People energetically are a reflection of you. So the more I've been practicing and kind of like being in this better place with myself, and loving myself again, the more I'm coming back to that thought and feeling of being playful with life. I think I was very serious before. Over time I've gotten really serious and frustrated. And that playful aspect of thinking is you're not trying to force anything to happen. You're not trying to manifest anything. You're just in this space of your mind where you can become more playful of the curiosity of why things are the way they are or what they're happening with. It's kind of in a way, from my way of explaining this, is you're open. You're open to new perspectives. For example, maybe you clear off a counter and you redecorate, or you have something in your room and there's a symbol. You're like, oh, I wonder why I put that there. Maybe you like it, but there's another version on a higher dimensional perspective as to why we have things where we have them. Why the symbol of something. You ever listen to music before and then all of a sudden you start hearing things you've never heard before from music? It's kind of like that. You have a new perspective of a higher dimension of your living and surroundings of reality. Everything's a symbol. There's a symbol. I have a cactus here. Cactuses are good for, so are symbolically known for living in a desert and with tough living conditions. But we do things sometimes, or we have things in places sometimes, but why? Why did we do that? Because on a soul level, your soul knows. Your soul knows, like, more than your conscious self, your higher self. Whatever ways you want to look at this. Everyone's got a fancy word these days. That's not your higher self. That's your higher self. No. That's your, like, oversoul, higher self, angelic being, whatever. One of those knows more than your conscious human self, okay? No. That's your rebirth of the... Everyone's got to make it like their own twist. That's the lemon pop soul shiznam cheese it version of the his nap mechanism. Whatever, dude. Whatever makes you happy. There's a version of you that knows more than you do consciously. It's a part of you. And we're existing on all these levels at once. And there's a part where symbolically you have things that are in place for a reason. It's kind of like when you have written something in your notes, you have a journal and you read it. You ever reread your Facebook posts from like years ago? Some of them are embarrassing, right? Especially yours, but I'm just kidding. But I've reread some of my Facebook history posts, and it's like on this day. And I've written stuff where I'm like, I know more about that now than I did when I wrote that. I don't even know I don't even know if the version of me knew what I was really writing. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. There's things beyond reasons of the moment and the symbol and the meaning. Like, I have crystals here. I redecorated my counter space. We're not always going to have all the answers right now. I'm just saying. Shift your perspective of how you are experiencing life, and maybe you have an answer. Don't react the same way. Don't respond the same way. I have a little board here. I wrote my message. It says, your power is in the words you're afraid to speak, so speak fearlessly. And it's true. Taking your power back is one of my big topics right now. Taking your power back is it no longer bothers you. You're no longer allowing something to be overpowering you. If it's overpowering you, it's fearful. You're afraid of it. You're afraid to be you. You're afraid to say something. You're afraid of disappointing someone. You're afraid of whatever it is. You're afraid of a situation. Don't be afraid. Take your power back. Taking your power back with Joe. There was something I thought about today. I laughed at myself. Something with Joe. I don't know what the hell. I mean, right now you're listening to me talk about it. You're like, what are you going to say? I don't remember. I know it's funny in the moment. Words of wisdom with Joe. I don't know what it was, but it was awesome with Joe. How's that? But going back to speaking your truth, it's such a freeing feeling. It could be angry, but when you start to really say how you really feel, it's a healing. It's like therapeutic. It's therapy where you can cry a little bit, get upset a little bit, but it makes me think. Sometimes I wish I had more people to share my life with in the way that I really crave. I think we crave that sometimes. I crave like deep connections and conversation. And I have ADHD because because I don't know why, because God made me this way, but um sometimes I feel weird when I'm talking to people because I'm like, do they think I'm weird because I genuinely just want to keep asking them interesting questions. And then there's times where I just want to be alone. I don't want to be bothered. I have this energy or emotional side about the mental and emotional part of me where I'm not a fan of last minute plans because I feel weird. I think it's a little bit of autism, not gonna lie, but I feel really uncomfortable. Like I don't want that. Like I need to mentally prepare for someone to come over. There's times where I have the energy for something and then I don't. I can shift. And I think for a long time, I didn't understand what that was. I think I was more upset because I didn't feel normal. So I took medication for it, which I no longer do because I got addicted to it. But um, sometimes I wonder, like, am I going to be too much for someone? Is there, and I think a lot of people out there wonder this too, despite who you are, what you have. It's like, is there someone there? Not that I'm looking for this love life relationship, but in a way, we wonder with our uniqueness of learning about who we are and loving ourselves more and getting understandable of what that is. Some people stop learning about themselves. They need to keep learning. Don't stop learning about who you are. Your journey doesn't stop at spirituality and stuff. And I think some people are like, "Oh yeah, Reiki and healing, and I'm done. I don't need to know." Trust me. Keep learning more about it. Just save yourself time. Keep learning about yourself. But learning to find someone that can communicate or um, be good at communicating and expressing and working with each other, pushing each other in a good way. I think some people they don't want that. They want certain things. They have this stuff made up in their head. But I think not just myself, but individuals, we wonder sometimes, you know, about the future, but or if this is even possible. And it is. It is. The more you think about something with fear or doubt, you're going to create that. And we want to make sure we stay in a positive timeline. When you are happy and you know it, you clap your hands. But when you're happy, you're leading that into more of happy timelines. Um, when you're in fear, lack, depression, you're wanting something to shift your reality to be happy internally with your internal self. You want something to change. And that's where we need to learn how to love ourselves in the present moment, be happy now, not looking for something to fix it, to fix the void, heal it, cry it, whatever you got to do. But I'm always wondering about life. I think this is a very fascinating experience. I think that we are here for more than the reasons that we know. I could talk about spiritual experiences and what I have come to realize, but I also I'm the type that I'm always fascinated with the workings of the world. I would love to experience more of that. Um, and I appreciate it. I think I'm always really honestly looking for more events to happen and synchronicities. But I have to remember too, is I have to live it. And that's why I want to go backwards a little bit again to living life, to live again. Today I had some tasks I needed to do, and I did them. And so some of you are like, great, Joe. Like, what is your point? My point is, for a long time, I wouldn't do some of these. I wouldn't care. I would be over it. I didn't want to do certain tasks. Like today, I worked on my car a little bit. I had to figure out a solution to something, and I figured it out. But I think sometimes there was this overwhelming feeling of, oh man, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to learn. I don't want to. And I said something recently I wanted to share with you again. What you do here is what you're going to do there. And what I mean by that is if that's the way I carry on, it's going to be about not just that, but everything. Oh, I don't want to do it. It means I don't want to do the work. I don't want to learn. So I have to enjoy the work because it's not just any task. It's going to be everything. Nothing good comes easy. So remember that. But to live again, put in the effort. You're worth the effort. Do things for yourself. Go above and beyond. Do things that you normally would avoid. Because you're going to realize it's a good feeling to accomplish it. And where are we at? Excuse me. I'm just excited for the present moment. I'm excited for the present moment. I'm excited for what's to come. I feel much different than I did previously over the past couple of weeks. It's been a nice, freeing feeling of, this might sound silly, but I've been enjoying watching TV shows. I'm rewatching one of my favorite shows, which is The Magicians. You should check it out. Great show. And cooking more, working on things. I didn't realize how I wasn't really doing these things. So I'm excited to do them and be free and have fun again and not be uncomfortable or insecure. I am worthy of living, worthy of having a good time. And it was something that I think also helped when I went to that party a couple weeks ago and talked to people. I remember talking about this in the previous episode, saying how I'm no longer afraid of being who I am. Our life has these moments where they're not pleasant. Maybe you're not proud of them, but who cares what people think about you? You're you. I think we compare ourselves to how we're living life and what you have or don't have. You have a lot more than you realize. So appreciate this moment. Appreciate what you're learning and experiencing. And I think I want to remind you in this moment to be more playful with your life. Don't be so fearful or overwhelming about things. Ask yourself, what can I learn about this? Why did I do that? What's the meaning of this? Have more fun with the experiment of your life. But I guess the whole message really is to find that balance, right? Find the balance. And wrapping it up again with be creative, be passionate, but do it because you love doing it. And I do this because I love doing it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Abandoned Planet. My name's Joe, and I'll catch you on the next timeline. Peace.